doesn't have to be real formalish. Just turn it on and let him
Embellish it.
tell me a story. I want to hear. I want to hear one of your good ones.
Well, I'm not sure.
Probably
how
could
good
go
they
back to the early one. Probably. How old were you? 4 or 5.
are. The shoe story.
Yeah. I like that one. That's probably one of my favorites. Then we can go into the inventions that you want to see. Do you know that somebody invented your conveyor belt shoes? Do you know that? We saw it on TV.
Oh, really?
A rendition of your conveyor belt shoes. I saw it. We saw it. We laughed.
Millions were lost.
Millions down the drain because you didn't follow through with your invention here.
Well, if we can get the micro or the refrigerator microwave oven to the marketplace, we might still have a
Might
chance.
still make millions, huh? Oh.
Anyway, when we were young, Mom would send us to the shoe repair shop up on Weller Street.
No,
Uh,
it wasn't
was it Weller?
Wilson.
wrong.
Wilson? To
When you're 4 or 5, you forget all the details, exact details. He couldn't read the signs anyway. You just knew where it was, right?
that's part of my problem. Anyway, we would take shoes and deposit them there to be fixed, and they would give us the claim checks to come back and get them, but we either lost them or never returned with them because usually all you had to do was to point out the shoes that were fixed, and he would.
Let you bring them
He,
home.
yeah, he had enough faith in you that you weren't
Going to
trying
steal
to
somebody
you weren't
else's
trying to
shoes.
steal someone else's shoes. But anyway, one particular occasion, Mom had sent me there with her shoes, and when I went back to pick them up, I didn't have a claim ticket, and he wanted me to tell him which ones they were, and I couldn't describe them to him very well, but he asked me to tell him what type of shoes they were, and the only description I could come up with was the only name that Mom ever gave to them, and that was that they were her clodhoppers. So I told him that they were clodhoppers.
There's such a word. Yeah.
And about that time, the friend of his that was sitting in the shoe repair shop with him doubled over in laughter. And I didn't know what the joke was because that was what Mom had always called him. Anyway, so the shoe repairman just smiled a little bit. He didn't really laugh at me, but he asked me to come around the counter and with all of his racks of shoes to come point out which ones were Mom's shoes. So I went over and pointed them out to him, and I think he agreed with me after that they were indeed clodhoppers, and I paid him.
Of course it doesn't.
And took the shoes home.
Well, that was the time that I had given you, I think it was a $5 bill. I entrusted him with it to pay for them. And Independent Mike, he takes the shoes, as I remember it, and went clear down to Williams Street here, and then up Williams home. And I kind of began to wonder where he was, because he was only about 4 years old.
Did you stop at the store for some poppin' cupcakes? Or?
Nope.
No?
I don't think so.
He got home with it okay,
I was probably still at the age that I was given candy for free down at the car store.
You didn't have to pay for
I didn't have to
anything,
pay for that anyway.
but did you get free candy?
I got candy from Ann for several years anyway.
I used to get, when Nancy lived up the street here, she lived up here, what, the second, one, two, about the third, fourth house up here when I was, I was 8 or 9 years old, I suppose. And she would send me to the store, and I would have to go clear down to Williams and then down to Sheridan's. And there was a woman that ran a store, one of the stores, there's a couple of stores over there, one of the stores that always gave me a sack full of candy.
How about the story, the time that Nancy and Dale were gonna take you to church or somewhere or something?
Yeah. Dale used to drive all of us up to church on Sunday mornings. He would usually take Mom and myself and Galen and sometimes Dad if Dad didn't go on ahead early. This one particular Sunday morning, we were always running late, and this was no exception. Everyone else had gotten ready except for me, and Dale was already sitting in the street with the car running, and Nancy and Mom and Galen were already in the car, and I was the last one to get ready, and I came running out of the house, slid right into the back seat of the car. The back door of the car was open. I slid into the back seat, and the door was closed behind me, and Dale starts to slowly pull on up the street. Nancy hadn't realized that I had gotten into the back seat. She didn't notice when I got in, and so she says to Dale, "Well, aren't you going to wait for Mike?" And Dale returns in a gruff voice. He realized that I had gotten into the car. He says, "Well, if you can't get ready in time, we're just going to have to leave him at home." And Nancy was taken aback, and she says, "Well, you don't have to be so nasty about it." And about that time, she turns around, she sees me in the back seat, and at that point, Dale says, "Well, haven't you ever been fooled before?" And Nancy says, "Yeah, when I married you." Let's see. You were asking about some of my paper delivering experiences.
Oh yes, do tell us about your paper delivering experience. Wasn't there a deaf couple or something on your route? What was that?
Oh, there are several
Interesting people.
yeah, several interesting people. This one particular couple, well, they were deaf, and when I went to collect, it was nearly impossible to get them to hear me. Sometimes I was afraid that I'd break my hand hammering on the door, or break my toe kicking the door. But eventually, they would always realize I was out there. They usually had their TV turned up at about 120 decibels, but eventually I was able to make
And how were they able
myself-
to know you were there?
Well, I think they finally felt the vibrations of their side of their house shaking. Yeah.
I thought it was they used to wear a stake around your neck to get the dog's attention or something.
No, that was Mel that had to get the dog's attention. Then the frustrating thing about paper routes, at least one of the frustrating things, was when the trucks would drop off the papers, and they would drop them off on the corner, oftentimes without any protection around the papers, so if it started raining, after they dropped them off, your papers would get totally soaked, and you, or at least I anyway, would have to deliver the papers to these people all soaked. So usually I picked out the most benevolent people to give the soaked ones to, so I wouldn't get in trouble. And one particular benevolent person, I thought he was probably the nicest one on the route, so I picked picked out the most soaked one to give to him. And this was 5 o'clock in the morning, so I didn't think anyone would be up at that time, but I had the paper all out of my bag, ready to put into his mail slot, and he comes to the door to take the paper from my hand. So at that point it was too late. I had to go in and give him the soaked paper, even though I had a few dry ones left in my paper pouch. But since he was so nice, he got the most soaked one.
Oh.
Then there was the time that usually in the months of March or April, the winds would usually be pretty severe. And one morning after going down to get to my papers, I think I think I took the wagon, or I was still taking the wagon with me at that time.
Pulling the wagon with
Yeah.
the papers, okay.
And he's stacked.
So we're talking how old?
Probably
15 or 16? No.
probably 12 or so.
Okay.
Anyway, stacking the papers up on the wagon, and a lot of times I wouldn't, a lot of times I wouldn't prepare for the wind. I didn't have any bricks with me or anything to weight the papers down, so occasionally I'd start pulling the wagon down the street, and one of the top paper would fly off and blow down the street.
So you'd be short of paper.
Well, I'd go running after it, trying to get as many pieces as I could. So anyway, I was usually left with a very small paper. So
who got it?
so I'd have to beef up the paper with somebody else's one hand.
Take a page from here and a page from there to get this guy
Somebody-
somewhat of a paper.
Somebody else's funny section in somebody else's TV guide. And if I had a front page, then that would constitute a complete paper. But one morning, I think the front section actually blew away too. So one of the people ended up getting, I think, just a sports page. The sports page in the comics, I think, was about all they got.
And it went to, was there any particular person? You don't remember that part, huh? You didn't
I
have
remember
any-
which
that
house
was-
got it, but I can't remember the people in the house too well. But I never heard anything about it. Probably meant that those were the only two sections they read anyway. They were probably grateful that they didn't have the rest of the paper they have to throw away. They just had the useful sections.
Okay. Well, which one of the couple things total that you want to say next?
Oh, the one about freezing the bottle of pop that Dad got upset about. It's always kind of funny. Dad would bring home Pepsis every now and then that he'd buy at the store. If he found them on sale, he'd stock up with several six-packs in the garage or in the basement. And one particular time in the evening, I decided to get a bottle of pop out, and in order to cool it down quicker, I'd stick it in the freezer and come back for it an hour or so later. But this particular evening, I stuck it in there and forgot about it. And Dad was the one that discovered it the next morning when he got up to make breakfast. And Dad was quite upset by this exploded bottle of Pepsi he found in the freezer, and he demanded to know who it was that had stuck that bottle of pop in there. And so I owned up to it, and
You did.
he immediately demanded that I pay him a quarter for it, which was He never asked us to pay for the pop before, but his reasoning was that he didn't mind us drinking them up, but if we were going to blow them up, we had to pay him for it. There's another time when
Who cleaned it up?
I don't think there's that much to clean up. I think there's
just
just
kinda went all-
most of it stayed in the bottle, and there were just
Oh.
a few chips of glass I think that had to be picked up. That was about
okay.
it.
You lucked out.
There was another time with a carton of donuts. I remember. I was
Did he thought he had well hidden or what?
no, they were on top of the refrigerator, and I was fairly small, or I was able to reach up to the top of the refrigerator just barely on my tiptoes. I think I had taken a donut out somehow, and I had to put the lid of the donut carton back down. And at the time, I noticed it was kind of tough going. I couldn't get the lid down very easily. I had to keep pushing it, and finally I got it down back on the box. I was up on my tiptoes doing it. I couldn't really see what I was doing. And when Dad came out to get breakfast, I think he was going to have a donut or two for himself, and he gets the donut carton down, and he finds that one of the donuts has been sliced in half by the end flap on the donut carton. He was pretty huffy about that. Couldn't understand why someone would slice one of the donuts in half. And that was one that I didn't own up to, I don't think.
But tell us about the birds. You got like,
Tell
you have
about
good bird stories?
Do you remember the time that the bird flew into the bowl of tapioca?
No, I think that was either before my time or else
That was vintage.
before I could remember.
It was when we were building the big room out there, I think. Get Gordon to tell that.
Gordon's not here. What happened? Did you have company? Or what was
No.
it? Just the bird?
I had made up a big bowl of tapioca. The boys, all of them, I guess, liked tapioca pudding, so I had made a double batch to feed on. And we were building that room. You ought to remember that one, Norman. We were building
Home from school.
that room out there, and there was a window there where the refrigerator is now. And so it was open, at that stage where it was open. The kids, when they would come home from school, they'd turn the parakeet out, let it fly through the house. And for some cause or other, they forgot about the open window, I think. Anyway, I had put this bowl of tapioca in the middle of the table, and we were sitting down to eat when this bird flew right square into that bowl of hot tapioca.
Oh, shoot.
And we were determined not to throw that bowl of tapioca away. The bird liked to go to the faucet and take a bath. The kids would turn the water on, and it just really had a big time under that faucet. So that was how it got the tapioca out of its
That's the way
feathers.
it cleaned itself out, huh?
And we had tapioca pudding besides.
There was one other funny thing with the parakeets, at least the last couple parakeets that we had. There was a store, one of the corner stores had a gumball machine that if you got specially marked gumballs, you got to pick out a prize. So one time I picked out a prize of this little skull that had, I think, diamonds in its eyes, and it was hollow inside. And after I'd tired of playing with it, we had rigged up a couple little bells inside the skull and put a wire through the top of the skull and put it into the parakeet's cage. And at least the last couple parakeets we had, anytime you would ring the bells, they would immediately jump over to that side of the cage, stick their head up inside the skull, and just start chattering away. So here was this skull with a parakeet's tail and feet sticking out the bottom of it, and you would hear the parakeet chattering to the skull. Anyway, that became dubbed the parakeet's ancestor phone. Whenever they were chattering, they were talking with their ancestors.
What was your dog's name?
The dog had a number of names. Some of them which can be repeated for public consumption. I think the last name that I had given it was Fritter, and I'm not sure exactly where that name came from. Its name started out as Isabel, went to Izzy, went to Briss, to Brissy, to anyway, somehow it ended up being Fritter.
I'm taking this, what do you call, you take, I don't want to call it bets. Maybe it's bets. What do you call that thing whenever you say it's going to be a time or a place or something? You take odds. What do you do? What do you call that?
It's a pool.
Pool. Maybe that's it. I have a pool going. That possibly that this wonderful little person that's going to show up on your doorstep next June, that we thought possibly the number one lead name could possibly be Fritter. And I have odds for Fritter.
I think those have to be fairly long odds.
You have to tell them how you and Galen got your nicknames.
Well, I had a number of nicknames growing up too, but my original nickname was Puff, and apparently that came because of my habit of puffing out my cheeks, I guess, as a very young
About what
kid.
would that look like?
You can just imagine.
Come on, Nick. Oh, come on.
Anyway.
Do you remember doing it?
No, I
No,
don't.
that's
I don't even
beyond
remember
your.
doing
Okay, all right. We'll let that one pass.
it. But my second succession of nicknames came because of being skinny as a little kid. I used to be able to suck in my stomach, and to many people it looked like a skeleton in front of it because of my ribs showing. Anyway, so I got the nickname of Ribs.
Okay,
Because
could we do that one? Can you still suck it in like that?
No.
No? Oh, that won't work either. Okay.
Anyway, Ribs went to, I think it went straight from Ribs to Rubs. Anyway, Rubs was my name for many years. That was probably my name until I got to college, I think.
Do all your friends know you as Rubs,
No.
or was this just strictly
No,
a
it
family
was, it was
endearment?
strictly family and a few neighborhood kids.
Oh, okay. So the yearbook did not read.
No.
Okay, okay.
He also had a number of nicknames. Galen's nickname. I think the one that lasted the longest was Cakes, and I think that was just because people said he ate a lot of cakes, and so it became his nickname. But one summer, either Raj or Mel, one or the other, took the copper tone bottle and spelled his name on his back with the copper tone tanning solution.
You're kidding
And
me.
he-
Was that you, Shug?
And Galen, I don't think, realized what was going on at the time anyway. For the next few days, he had his
I didn't know that. Okay.
yeah, name tanned on his back.
You mean that stuff that turns dark when you put it
Yeah,
on? Oh,
it
okay.
tans
didn't-
you regardless of whether you're in the sun or not.
Oh, okay, okay.
Well, your names, those two names are downstairs on the wall yet.
Mm,
Who did that?
I think it's probably
Carved in the wall,
probably Galen.
No, it was painted on.
just
I think it
painted
was,
on.
I think it was Galen.
It wasn't you. You wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that. I didn't think so.
I thought maybe it was one of the older kids.
What's the worst thing you can remember doing that still to this day bothers you? I know it's got to be funny. Besides giving that dear, sweet man that drenched paper.
Oh, probably the thing that got me in the most trouble growing up was one time when Jesse and Lois were here, and I think that we had been given the task of taking all the trash out. Anyway, I was still in my pyromaniac stage, and
Your what stage?
my pyromaniac phase, and there were some neighbor kids that were down kind of poking around the fire, and I think I took exception to one of them maybe trying to put out the fire or something. Anyway, I had a big long piece of cardboard that I lit the tip of the piece of cardboard in the fire, and I took off down the alley after with a flaming torch. Anyway, Mom had happened to look out the window at the wrong time. And I was
You're
banished to the bedroom for a few hours. Well, actually, that reminds me of another one that I didn't get in so much trouble for, but maybe I should have been in trouble for. Just the opposite. It was water balloons instead of fire. The neighbor behind us, his mother would leave him at home all day when she worked, and usually leave him in the care of a babysitter who wasn't much older than the rest of us, if any older at all. So in other words, she didn't have any control over us. And we used to have some nice water balloon fights, and we'd also fill up these detergent squirt bottles with water and run after each other squirting that. And because this particular kid's mother wasn't home, usually that house turned into a fort of some sort. And so the kids would run into the house for protection, and a lot of times that protection would break down. And without a figure of authority there to protect the house, it tended to get drenched also.
Oh, no.
And after one particularly good drenching, Mother came home, and the house still hadn't dried out, and she was a little upset by that.
I think that was the time she called me.
Yeah, she made phone calls to all the responsible parties in the neighborhood.
Couldn't blame her much.
Do you remember an incident where a couple of your older brothers, or tell us from your perspective, when a couple of your older brothers were doing things they shouldn't be? How old were they?
numerous times.
Yeah.
Well, the one that left them lame and
Oh,
non-hearing and hearing impaired,
Yeah.
maybe I should say.
Yeah, the fire. Well, actually, the cherry bomb incident, the famous cherry bomb incident.
How do you remember that?
Well, I had been given.
You
The-
coaxed me.
Yeah, I had been. Yeah, first of all, I coaxed Mom into letting me go down to Missouri with a friend from the neighborhood, and I had been given a $5 bill with the mandate to bring back as many fireworks as I could for that $5 bill. Anyway, I was wanting to get as much pop for the $5 bill as I could, so I didn't mess around with any of the sparklers or the skyrockets or anything like that. I went for the small explosives, which I think were about 1,000 or 1,500 firecrackers and a half-gross box of cherry bombs. Anyway, I think the cherry bombs, we were relieved of the cherry bombs by Raj, primarily, who kind of took control of those. He enlisted Mel's help in firing these cherry bombs down the street with the slingshot that they had. One of them would hold the wood part of the slingshot, and the other one would pull back with the cherry bomb. Or actually, I think one would hold the wood and the cherry bomb, and the other one would light it. And they'd let the fuse burn down about halfway, and then fire it off. And if they got it just right, the cherry bomb would explode at the peak of its arc. There was one cherry bomb that, for one reason or another, didn't go off when it was fired, and the neighbor kids all went down the street to look for it, and one of them found it and brought it back, and it was lit a second time, and it still wouldn't go off, and it was either on the third or fourth attempt that Mel stuck the match to the half-burnt fuse, and the cherry bomb just went off immediately. Apparently the middle of the fuse had been burnt out, and so it was just like sticking the match to the cherry bomb itself, and it exploded, and the next thing I knew, Raj was running across the street to Dale, because we still didn't have a car. Dale had a car, and within minutes he was on his way to the hospital, and Mel went along also. So left the rest of us neighbor kids wondering just exactly what had happened. And I was quite terrified by the whole incident, and I was kind of afraid to, but I found myself, along with the other kids, kind of looking around the yard for fingers or blood. I guess I thought maybe if he'd lost a finger out of the deal and we found it, then maybe it could be saved. But it wasn't until much later that evening we found out the whole story on how Raj had his fingers sewn up, at least one, I think probably a couple of his fingers sewn up, and Mel had to have some treatments for his chest because he'd had some fragments that had punctured his chest and arm, and it was for a long time that Mel had hearing loss in his ear and had troubles with ringing of that ear. But after that, then all the firecrackers got buried out in the backyard, and I think we actually sold the rest of the cherry bombs to another neighbor kid. But we were all afraid that we were all going to prison if the police came around and found any fireworks in the house, so we quickly got rid of them all.
What was the other one that you thought of?
not sure. I guess there were several. Well, there was one paper route one, or in the. I used to get up very early in the morning to deliver papers. I'd usually get up around 4:30 in the morning when I first had my paper routes. And there was one house on the end of the paper route. It was across Madison Avenue. And they didn't have the regular hooks underneath their mailbox, but they had a kind of like a paper tube underneath their mailbox that you had to roll up the paper and slide it into that tube. And one morning at 4:30 in the morning, I had just about got the paper slid into the tube, but it slipped out of my hands and smacked their doorbell at 4:30 in the morning. And it was a very loud doorbell. And I ran the 100-yard dash in less than 9 seconds back across the street and hid behind a house until I thought that the danger was over.
Did you leave your wagon out the street? Was it behind your house?
No, it was far enough away from. It was clear across Madison Avenue, so the wagon was left almost a block away. So anyway, didn't hear about it. So. This day, why Galen never collected from this one particular house on his paper route. There are many theories put forward, but to this day we can't really prove any of them. I think probably the theory that is
Most widely
the most widely accepted theory is that this person got behind in their payment 3 or 4 weeks, and Galen didn't quite have the nerve to go up and tell him that he owed this fairly large sum of money. So rather than face telling the subscriber that he owed quite a bit of money, Galen decided to just let him have the paper for free. And so this went on for well over a year. It might have went on for years, in fact. Galen would turn down all offers to even for any of us to even go and collect a portion of the money. And one of the times that I was out collecting with him, the subscriber actually came to the door and asked Galen if they had paid yet that week. And Galen assured them that yes, they had, not to worry about it.
So how were they? How did they?
Was
what
there
was the
any other
theories
theory?
to how they responded to the next carrier?
Well, we always theorized that they were probably pretty upset when the next carrier came around and had the nerve to actually charge them for the paper. We figured that they probably had come to accept the fact that they were to receive the paper for life for free. But
Well, I had picked a big batch of rhubarb and had laid it on the counter to clean it, and Mike came running through the house. Until he was in 2nd grade or so, he was very Dutchy. And only his mother could understand him. And came running through the house. Oh, we're gonna have barberry pie. Along that same line, while he was in kindergarten, he had started to school with the little girl next door, and they were both in the same class. And seemingly everything was fine. But then the teachers decided that the class was too large, so they divided the class, and Mike thought he was free from this little girl. He was going to go into the other class, and here she followed him in there. I guess she had to take care of him because he couldn't talk to him. She was his
Yeah,
interpreter.
I had my own personal interpreter. Actually, even though I resented her coming along, I guess.
It was for the
Yeah,
better.
yeah, it was for the better. I can remember one particularly difficult session near Christmas time in kindergarten when the teacher wanted us to tell her what we all wanted for Christmas so that she could write down on the board each gift, whatever it was. Anyway, after
Many steps.
yeah, after many attempts at telling the kindergarten teacher what it was I wanted, and her saying, "What does he say?" Finally, the little girl next door realized what it was I wanted and told her. Yeah, saved the day.
What was it?
Oh, it was actually one of these little, it was a little Godzilla monster. I think it came with a dart gun or something. and you shot. I think you took the dart gun and shot at it or something. Anyway.
Godzilla just wasn't the best in your vocabulary. Huh?
Yeah.
That must,
And who knows what it was I was saying.
Put your catch your foot on. It must have been about that same time that Grandma and Grandpa Cook were back here, and she couldn't begin to understand you. And so, as they left that day, she said, "Now when I come back the next time, I want you to be talking." So after they had gone on, I said, "Mike, why don't you talk?" "'Cause I don't want to." His true answer. You didn't have to. Everybody else
Everybody
talked
else,
for
you had
you.
plenty of people talk for you, didn't you?
Is that all? I just didn't ever figure out your method, but
Feathers were fevers and feffers.
Is that where fevers come from? Ah. What other sounds? You couldn't say, you did hard, or
Uh,
you just didn't say TH.
I don't think I
never
don't
even
think
tried.
TH was part of my vocabulary.
Yeah. How about L's or?
I don't even recall that part. I just remember, that's the only thing I remember that I had trouble with. You can tell that one.
No. We want to hear it from both perspectives.
No, Elaine and I both worked at the same grocery store in Ames, at the Hy-Vee food store. And I think we had worked there for a few months together. And actually, I don't think that anything happened the first few months. I was, during that part of my college, I was also participating in a work-study program where I would go to school for a few months and then go to Minneapolis for a few months. But it was after I'd come back from Minneapolis the second time and went back to work that
When we saw you? Or was that later?
it may have been that time. I'm not sure.
It probably was. You saw how happy Mel and I were, and you just
So anyway, the next time I went back,
Real good medicine, right?
That's right. Anyway, the funny thing about our first date,
How did it come about?
well, I think that.
Were you standing by the meat counter, or I mean, what happened? Do you remember exactly, or
Oh,
what?
I think we were very casual at first. We just maybe did a couple things together or something. Then we actually had
An official date.
had an official date where we conversed on the telephone and set something up. I forget whether it was some. I think it was some sort of music at the.
No
What's-
coaching. No coaching. No, we're going to get her side. We shouldn't be letting her hear this. Yeah.
Well, I think I know what it is. I can't think of the name of the building now. That they're on the campus where they would have jazz sessions sometimes. What's the name of that? They had a bookstore, Memorial Union.
Yeah.
I think there was some event in the Memorial Union that we went to. I think that was the first official date. Can't say for sure. Maybe Elaine remembers. Anyway, I think I showed up
Late?
to her
No.
place. No, I think I was on time, but I showed up to her place wearing a pink striped shirt and a pair of brown plaid pants.
Honest? Did he really? Oh, she's shaking her head. Yes, he did. Oh.
Anyway, Elaine saw that she had her work cut out for her.
A major purchasing agent would be here.
But Elaine was never one to put down a challenge. So things went on from there. I think the second date was probably a pair of white pants and the same pink striped shirt. And at that point, I think Elaine had seen everything in my formal wardrobe.
What did Elaine have on? Do you remember that?
No, I can't begin to remember outfits like Elaine can. So I couldn't tell you what she had
Did
on.
you spring for some food at this date, or was it just all free music?
I think the first few dates were on the budget plan. I can't recall exactly.
Now, Elaine, do you have any variants to this story at all? I mean,
No, none whatsoever.
none. It coincides with your memory of
That's
everything.
how I remember it.
Well, that's good.
The outfit was cute.
Elaine never knew that the stripes and flats could go together as well as they did.
You loved that pink striped shirt, didn't you?
Isn't that what you had on the 50th picture? Wasn't that a pink striped shirt? It was red and white, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In the 50th
Yeah.
picture?
Mhm.
Red and white.
Yeah, I'd upgraded a little bit.
So he had that pink shirt, and I think he wore it threadbare.
Some people worried a little bit about me.
Not Elaine.
About my color
She could-
selections.
Well, the color was fine. Nothing wrong with that.
So can you think of anything funny that happened on dates with Elaine? That you've never told Elaine, but you want to share with us? Look at her looking over. No, she said.
Well, there was one.
Shut it off.
Yeah, let's edit this one before it goes on tape.
I have to hear this.
We'll edit it later.
There
Go
was
ahead.
one
While
time.
you're on a roll,
There
let's
was
just
one
keep
time.
going.
There was one time that I had ask her out to a very special play, and I think it was like the weekend before Thanksgiving or something like that. And it was the only time that we could get together to see this play. And so we get there to the box office. I think we were actually 5 minutes late or so. And I pulled the tickets out, and looking at the tickets, I see that they are for 1 week later than the night that we were there for the play. And I couldn't believe this was happening to me. And I didn't quite know how to explain this to Elaine, that she'd gotten dressed up for nothing. But there just happened to be...
2 seats available?
No,
No?
that was completely sold out.
Oh, no.
But there were these 2 people who were also standing in the lobby arguing with the, or I don't know if they were arguing, but they were discussing with the ticket taker, wondering if there was any possible way that they could exchange their seats for that night's performance for the performance 1 week from that night.
Honest,
And-
did you?
Yeah, it was...
See how the Lord works things out for you? Gee whiz.
Incredible beyond belief. I think that performance was also completely sold out, but we had 2 tickets for it. And they gave us their 2 tickets for that night's performance, and we gave them those 2 tickets, and we were both happy.
And after missing
Save
the
the
first
day.
half hour of the show, why you...
I think that we only missed the first couple minutes of it, actually.
Good. Neat.
That was pretty incredible.
How far along were you in your relationship at this time? Was this
That was
1
pretty
month?
early.
Pretty
Yeah.
early, that you would still
Yeah,
be
it,
concerned.
yeah, it was one of those times where I would still have some explaining to do. It might not have reflected well on my general character.
So I think maybe for posterity we should have on what's really exciting happening in your life on what is today? December the 4th? 3rd? Is today
December
the 3rd?
the 3rd.
December the 3rd. What's the very latest, most exciting news in Michael Cook's life right now?
I don't know, Elaine, is there something?
Oh, now, come on.
Elaine started feeling a little queasy a couple of months ago. Couldn't figure out what.
Now. Gotcha. Yes, we can still hear you.
No,
Yeah,
he's
anyway.
better, really. To be focused on him.
Well, as you could just see, Elaine's pants are starting to get a little tight. And come next June 9th, we're hoping to have another little Elaine or a little Mikey to help us fill up our house in Washington.
No. Another little cookie.
Yeah, hoping to hear the patter of little footsteps within the next year.
Do you have any projections here about whether it be male or female or?
Well, as I've told Elaine, I'm giving odds already for it to be a girl.
Oh, really? Did you kind of feel girlish about this, or how? You know?
Well, it's partly old wives' tale or old husband's tale, I guess. But the heart rate is a little high.
Yeah.
It's in the 160s, and little girls tend to be a little faster than little boys, but it's nothing 100%.
That's right. That's right.
So,
So
But
as
I-
long as you can raise a Braves fan, it really doesn't make any difference, right?
So I might have my work cut out for me if it's a little girl, but I'm sure it can be done.
Hmm. What are you saying, Melvin, to me? Somebody talk?
Say something, please.
This is costing money, huh? The director's getting a little panic stricken here that the production costs are going up when the tape's blank.
I think we should break for a commercial here.
Commercial break.
A Metamucil commercial.
I'd prescribe this to any of my patients, whether they
For?
needed it or not. With the new orange flavor,
Sugar-free.
sugar-free, I don't think it could hurt a thing. Might even help some people.
Do you think should be maybe daily, weekly, twice daily? What do you think for, especially over 45? What do you think?
I think a glass of this with each meal would probably be appropriate.
You would need a spinach then, would you?
Do you recommend a good brand breakfast with this, or can you forego the brand breakfast?
I think you could probably forego the bran with this.
Could you give us your nutritional background here that qualifies you to be?
Oh yes, during my medical training I received well over a half hour of nutritional training.
Which makes you well qualified
That's
for
right.
a diet as a dietary
That's
expert,
right.
huh?
So,
Okay.
so I think you can rest assured that if I have recommended something that you can go with it.
You'll go with it, okay?
I've been asked to tell about the time that Galen and I were out delivering pamphlets. I think it was for a revival meeting, at least it had some association with church gathering of some sort, I think. Anyway, they were only one-page ads, and we were given a stack of them about this high to put one on each person's porch. I think we were
In a Toma, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, we started at the beginning, I think, of Ransom Street, just one street over, and we started at Church Street in Ransom, and we were faithfully putting one of these sheets on each person's porch. Anyway, we get down about 3 or 4 blocks, and the stack was still, about this high. And we hadn't seen any measurable decline in the stack at all. So we thought it might work a little better if we started putting 2 of these on each person's porch. Anyway, after several houses, we really couldn't see a real measurable difference even with this strategy. So the numbers quickly went up. I think at first it was probably 5 or 10 of them per porch. We figured that they would probably want to share them with their friends, I guess. But eventually the number jumped dramatically. I think probably the last house got 100 or 200 of these. If their kids didn't have paper for school, they didn't. Anyway, that one I don't think we revealed for a few years after we.
Your mother's looking very surprised over there. I don't think she ever did hear that one before. Then there's something about Galen pulling the wagon, doing his favor or something.
Well, we, as paper boys, had to deliver our papers in the face of rain, snow, or what the other element is, hail, I guess. Anyway.
Don't interfere.
Well, but the only help we had early on was a was a red wagon. We each had a wagon to deliver our papers, and when it snowed quite a bit, the wagon was kind of tough to pull, especially when it was loaded down with a couple, 3 bundles of papers. And one particular morning, after it snowed about 8 inches, I remember Galen coming home and remarking that it felt like he was dragging a wagon with square wheels. Galen was
Quite descriptive.
yeah, he was pretty descriptive, especially when he was a little frustrated. It was probably Galen's fault for not getting up in time. I think I'd probably already delivered my papers before it started to snow. But that was a chronic problem of Galen's, getting up to deliver his papers. And his mom can tell, he oftentimes couldn't remember whether or not he delivered his papers or not. By the time he was ready to go to school, he could never remember whether he had delivered his papers or not. We assumed that he did, but can't be sure. I do remember a person or two from his route that would complain that they wished that he would get their paper there to him before they had to go to work in the morning. That was usually 6:30 or 7. I think we were supposed to have them delivered by 6.
You did this every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just a sunny paper came in the morning. Every morning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
But,
Built stamina. That's what got you through medical school, right?
yeah. You're wanting to hear about the tips that we got. Usually towards Christmas time, we would try to induce as many tips as we could by delivering some Christmas cards in our papers the week or two before Christmas. And sometimes it brought results. But sometimes it didn't seem to. I think my paper route was a paper route full of 4 people, and Galen's route was a paper route full of relative rich people. He always seemed to get he always got the better tips.
Maybe you were too dependable. I was so glad they had to beg you to come.
They were just trying to do anything they could to get some better service. Trying to bribe him. I can remember going on. Actually, Galen was very good to me when I used to go out collecting with him. And just for going out collecting with him, he would give me, I think it was like 1/5 of all of his tips. Which was pretty good. I can remember him getting a box of chocolate-covered cherries, and he was quite distraught that they had given them that instead of cash. What are they giving these things to me for? His comment was that you should toss them against the side of their house. But I think we ended up eating them. Actually, I liked them even less than he did, because at that point I didn't like any types of fruits. I didn't care for cherries.
Particularly candy.
Yeah. It was ruining a perfectly good
Piece of chocolate.
ruining a perfectly good piece of chocolate and cream by putting a cherry in it.
I used to think that too. I could have done it. Oh yeah. I still don't really like them. I think they'd be a lot better with just the chocolate and the cream.